You know, the news cycle is just relentless, right? It moves so fast. So to really get a grip on what's happening, sometimes you've got to just hit pause, freeze a single moment in time. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're breaking down all the major headlines from just one evening's news.
Yeah, think of this like a time capsule. We're literally stepping into the news cycle of February 1st, 2026. We're going to see the stories that had everyone talking, from the really personal stuff to the big global headlines.
All right, let's kick things off with the lead story of the night, and it's a really emotional one. It's all about the return of a 5-year-old boy, Liam Kojo Ramos, and his dad, Adrian. They were finally heading home after being caught right in the middle of a national firestorm.
I mean, you can just feel the relief in that quote, can't you? That was Adrian, Liam's dad, talking while he and his son were finally on a plane. They were leaving a detention center in Texas, a place they'd been held for almost 2 full weeks.
And Adrian, the father, he called it their freedom flight. What a powerful name, right? It was this perfect symbol for the end of a 12-day ordeal, an ordeal that started in Minneapolis and ended up sparking outrage all around the world.
So the big question, the whole controversy, really boiled down to how the arrest even happened. You had 2 totally different stories. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, they claimed Adrian literally ran away and abandoned his son. But Adrian's account, completely different. He says, "No way, I would never ever abandon my son. I was just walking ahead to warn some other people." And, during those 12 days in detention, the conditions were apparently really tough. Adrian said his little boy, just 5 years old, was getting stomach aches and having nightmares, even waking up asking, "Are the police coming back to get us?" Just awful. And it was this one image that just exploded. This picture of little Liam wearing a Spider-Man backpack and a blue bunny hat that really turned this family's nightmare into a global story.
So this was Adrian's message, a direct plea, really, to the administration and to President Trump. He was just asking them to rule with compassion, to have a heart, especially when you've got kids caught in the middle of these really complex situations.
And after all of that, after the fear, the confusion, the detention, the flight, what's the very first thing this 5-year-old boy wanted when he got home? Some pizza. Just pizza. It's such a simple thing, right? But it's such a powerful reminder of the little kid at the heart of this huge story.
Okay, so that's one family's very personal story. But zooming out, the rest of the day's news was just packed with these broader attentions. I'm talking stuff happening on the streets of American cities, all the way up to the highest levels of international power.
So back in Minneapolis, the very same city that the Ramos family just got home to, things were really on edge. There was this new dashcam video making the rounds, showing federal agents pulling a woman out of her car at gunpoint. And then, in a city park, agents pepper sprayed a man during an arrest, leaving him bleeding. At the same time, on the international stage, a whole new batch of Epstein files dropped, and these included photos of former Prince Andrew, which just ramped up the pressure for him to come and testify before the U.S. Congress.
And listen, that wasn't even the only story that was reaching the highest levels of government. The Wall Street Journal, they dropped a bombshell report, and it raised some really serious questions about potential conflicts of interest involving President Trump's own family business.
The whole report really centered on one specific deal, and the number is just staggering. We're talking about $500 million. That's $500 million. And it was apparently paid in secret by a royal from Abu Dhabi for a big stake in the Trump family's cryptocurrency firm.
But here's the kicker. It was the timing that had everyone raising their eyebrows. This was for a 49% stake, so nearly half the entire company, and the deal went through just 4 days before Trump's inauguration. Now, the White House said the president had nothing to do with it, but you had ethics experts calling it a totally unprecedented financial mess for a new president to be walking into. All right, so we've had political storms. Now let's talk about a literal one. Because the biggest story happening right here at home was this absolutely brutal winter storm that was bringing a huge part of the country to a grinding halt. And when I say huge, I mean it. The scale of this thing was just immense. We're talking about 80 million people. 80 million Americans, from Florida all the way up to Virginia, were dealing with dangerously cold conditions. And the impact? It was just chaos. Get this, North Carolina alone had over 1,000 traffic accidents.
thousands and thousands of flights were canceled at major airports. Nashville was dealing with widespread power outages, and in the Outer Banks, a house literally collapsed into the ocean. It was just this perfect storm of disruption.
And just to give you an idea of how wild this weather was, let's look at Florida, of all places. Orlando and Jacksonville, they were down in the 20s. But the real shocker, Miami. It hit 36 degrees Fahrenheit. That broke a record that had stood for more than 100 years, all the way back to 1909. Incredible.
Okay, but as you know, a single day in the news is never just 2 or 3 big stories, right? There's always more going on. So let's do a quick, rapid-fire look at some of the other headlines that were breaking across the country on this day.
All right, first up, in Las Vegas, the FBI raided a home because they suspected it was housing an illegal biological lab. Pretty scary stuff. Then over in Flagstaff, Arizona, just a tragic story out of a college campus. 3 fraternity members were arrested in connection with the suspected hazing death of an 18-year-old. And, on a much lighter note, the sports world was getting hyped. The Patriots and the Seahawks both arrived in the Bay Area. The Super Bowl was just 1 week away.
So after a day just packed with heavy news, we've talked about detention, conflict, chaos, the news broadcast that evening ended on a totally different note. It was a story about one person's kindness just cutting right through all that bitter cold.
This takes us to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where temperatures had also just plummeted. And a guy there named Ryan Duvall saw that his neighbors were really struggling in the cold. So he decided to take his old vintage fire truck and put it to a new and honestly pretty incredible use.
His mission was so simple, yet so powerful. He saw people who were literally trapped by this freezing weather, so he just started driving his fire truck up and down the icy streets, looking for anyone who needed help and then giving them a free ride to a warm shelter. And in just 1 week, he helped almost 80 people get to safety.
And that's the note we're going to leave you on today. Because in his own words, Ryan said he didn't think he was doing anything all that special. He just said it's giving back to a community like everybody should do. And that's such a simple, powerful idea to think about, isn't it? That even on a day that feels completely overwhelming with bad news, these individual acts of compassion, they can still make all the difference in the world.